For most people, waking up to the rumble of artillery means something has gone terribly wrong. For us on Fortress World Aegis 7, it just means it's another Tuesday. The steady boom 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 of the defense batteries is our morning alarm, rattling the hab-block windows and shaking dust from the fortress city's adamantium bones. That's our dawn ritual, quite literally. While other citizens of the Imperium might start their day with a quiet cup of recaf or a murmured prayer, we kick ours off by shelling the empty hills beyond the walls, just to remind ourselves and anything watching out there that we're still locked, loaded and paying attention. I'm already awake before the next barrage lands. Hard to sleep through it anyway. My cot shudders with each distant detonation. I can taste the chalky tang of propellant in the air drifting down like bitter ash. It mixes with the ever-present stink of promethium exhaust and machine oil that clings to everything here. On a fortress world, even the atmosphere smells like an ammo dump. I swing my legs off the bunk and reach for my boots and flak vest without thinking. Regulations say if you want to see the morning, you sleep in your uniform. Regulation or not, it's solid advice out here. We've learned the hard way the enemy doesn't send ahead a polite notice before dropping in. So I sleep half-armored, my lasgun propped by the door, same as everyone else from the lowest habber right up to the planetary governor himself, I'd guess. Assuming he sleeps at all. My breath hisses between my teeth as I cinch the flak straps tight. It's cold today. The heating rations must have been cut again to spare more power for the void shields. You can never feed those things enough. Not on Aegis 7. This world's primary export is war, and its primary import is enemies. Between the greenskin warbands that swing by every few years looking for a good brawl, the cults lurking in the alleys, the odd chaos incursion, and Emperor knows what prowling the void, there's always something eager to test our defenses. They call Aegis 7 a fortress world because honestly, it's more fortress than planet. Bastion towers spike every horizon, gun emplacements crown every rooftop, and trenches carve up what used to pass for open countryside. Even the so-called farmlands between fortress cities bristle with camouflaged pillboxes and ammo dumps tucked between the crops. The scraggly patches of grain and grox pasture we manage to grow are just battlefields in waiting. The capital where I live is essentially one massive military complex pretending it has civilians inside. We call it Fort Imperator. But don't let the grand name fool you. It's not some glittering jewel of the sector. It's a gray concrete maze of bunkers and hab blocks, all wrapped in layer upon layer of plastile walls and razor wire fences. The administratum categorizes it as a fortress city, but we locals just call it the Casa, old Cadian term that means fortress. We adopted a lot of Cadian terms and traditions over the years. After all, Cadia was the gold standard for not getting steamrolled by things that go bump in the night. Emperor rest their souls. They had a good run until they didn't. Now that Cadia has fallen and the galaxy is sundered by the Great Rift, our world's duty is more important and perilous than ever. Reinforcements and relief are not guaranteed in these times, so we carry that torch alone if we must. Before I exit, I take a second to tap the small metal aquila affixed above my doorway, my personal little shrine. The two-headed eagle icon is blackened with soot, a memento from a past battle, and beneath it hangs a faded prayer strip bearing the words, "The Emperor protects." I whisper the morning litany under my breath. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for I am shielded by faith and flak. It's an old habit, but one that steadies my heart. With the sign of the aquila crossed over my chest, I finally push out into the corridor. I duck as I step out of my tiny quarters, narrowly avoiding a low-hanging bulkhead beam. Everything in this hab block is built for function over comfort. Drab gray walls, ceilings just high enough to march through without bashing your head, if you're not as tall as a space marine. Anyway, the lights are still dim and red-tinted night cycle illumination, though it's probably only a short while before the lumen strips brighten to the daytime levels. Not that real sunlight does much here. Fort Imperator sees the sun for maybe 5 hours on a good day, and the rest is either overcast by factory smog or obscured by smoke from distant skirmishes. I tap a finger on the OPEX panel by the door to check the local alert status. A pulsing amber rune. Drill in progress. No actual attack right now today. At least the shells screaming overhead are just our own boys and girls keeping themselves sharp. Good. Maybe that means I'll actually get breakfast before someone starts shooting at us in earnest. As I stride down the corridor, I pass a couple of my neighbors' fellow PDF reservists like almost everyone here. We nod to each other, blurred but dutiful. One of them, old Jenon, gives me a gap to the grin and quips, "Ah, smell that morning air. Nothing like the scent of high explosive to wake you up, eh?" I chuckle. Gallows humor is as much a part of our morning routine as recaf. Better than caffeine. Puts hair on your chest. I shoot back. Jenon pats the scraggly gray stubble on his own chest. Idnon burns it right off too. 3 short clacks and whoops echo through the corridor. The all clear for the drill. The artillery will rest for now. The echoes of the blasts fade, leaving a strange silence in their wake. I know it won't last long, so I savor it. A few moments of relative quiet, broken only by the scuff of our boots and the muffled murmur of others beginning their day. Down in the mess hall, I'm greeted by the familiar organized chaos of morning cow. The place is already packed with off-duty soldiers and night shift workers grabbing their rations. Long metal tables crisscross the hall, and even though it's just breakfast, half the folks here are already geared up for combat, flak armor on, helmets clipped to belts within easy reach. Here, casual attire means your last gun's safety is on, and your uniform jacket is unbuttoned. I weave through the crowd and pick up a tray of something the Munum insists is food. Looks like protein growl and a side of starch cakes. Smells faintly of machine oil, but hey, it's warm. I find an open seat beside a couple of familiar faces from my platoon. Corporal Lauren sits hunched over her bowl, shoveling oatmeal like sludge into her mouth as if it might evaporate if she slows down. Across from her, Medic Elm cradles a tin cup of recaf, the rising steam doing little to relax the perpetual worry lines on his brow. Both nod in greeting as I settle in. Morning sunshine. Lauren draws, voice thick with her usual sarcasm. Get a load of this fine cuisine. Almost tastes like real food today. I smirk and poke at my own grayish growl. It's lumpier than usual. They must be spoiling us. Maybe it's a special occasion. Lauren snorts. Emperor's teeth. If this is special, I dread to taste a regular day. He raises his cup in a mock toast. To another glorious morning on Aegis 7. Still alive, still kicking. We clink our tin cups and echo quietly. Another glorious morning on this world. Every morning you're alive to greet is indeed glorious in its own grim way. Before we can lament the breakfast further, a familiar figure from my hablock, old Janan, plops his tray down beside us with a wheezy chuckle. Morning lads and lasses, he greets. Setting down a steaming mug of recaf. Heard the latest. They found one of the coolant vats in Manufacturer 9 cracked open last night. Flooded the whole sublevel with promethium fumes. Lauren raises an eyebrow. Sabotage or just the tech priests getting sloppy? Janan shrugs, shoveling a spoonful of gruel. Who knows? Upper brass say it was an accident, but I've got a cousin on night shift there. He swears he saw shadows moving near the pipes right before it blew. Could be some stinking cultist trying something if you ask me. On Aegis 7, a heretic saboteur in our own Manufacturum. I scoff lightly, though the idea sends an unwelcome prickle of unease down my spine. We're no strangers to chaos cult attempts here, but the internal guard usually nips those in the bud long before they cause trouble. Probably just a lousy weld giving out. Probably. Janan agrees, stirring his recaf, though his tone says he's not entirely convinced. Still, keep your eyes open. Strange times. With that cheery thought, he ambles off to another table, leaving us exchanging glances. Great, Anshel mutters. Add ghost stories to my morning, as if I don't already have troopers coming into medbay with night terrors. He shakes his head and sips his recaf. Now Janan's spinning yawns about shadow saboteurs. Emperor, preserve us from old men and their rumors. Lauren smirks. Rumors or not, something's always plotting to kill us, right? If it's not orcs or cultists, it's our own thrice-cursed equipment. She raises her cup sardonically to being paranoid in the name of survival. We tap our cups together at that half smiling at the bleak humor. Paranoid or prepared. On a fortress world, they're the same thing. As we eat, the barracks-picked screens flicker on, crackling with their usual morning burst of static. The tiny voice of the Vox officer comes over the speakers. Attention, citizens. It draws only a few half-hearted glances. Most of us continue chewing. We know these daily announcements by heart. Planetary rotation 3BO2. Duty shift alpha begins in 30 minutes. All PDF units scheduled for morning exercises. Report to your designated drill yards. Live fire exercises in sectors 7G and 3C. Civilian work teams report to manufacturing stations for first shift. The voice pauses, then adds in a slightly more spirited tone. And remember, victory does not come to the unprepared. Every day of training is a day claimed from the Emperor's foes. A ragged cheer rises from a few particularly gung-ho souls in the hall. The rest of us mumble along for the Emperor. Not that we lack zeal, faith in the Emperor is our bread and water here. But at 5 a.m. on an empty stomach, fervor tends to be a bit muted. Announcement done. The piced screen switches to a rousing martial hymn. All brassy notes and rolling drums that set my teeth on edge. Lurin rolls her eyes and tosses her empty packet aside. Throne, I'd take the artillery serenade over this music. An elm chuckles and starts gathering his medkit. Give it an hour and you'll be humming it. I tease. Lurin ran groans, but I catch her tapping her fingers to the beat as we dump our trays and head out. We disperse to our stations. Lurin and I toward the drillard, an elm off to the Metaseer bunker. He likes to prep early for whatever sprained ankles or heat stroke cases the day's training might bring. People can get hurt even in drills. That's how it goes when you train with live ammo as often as we do. Our doctrine is simple. Train as you fight, because you'll fight as you trained. On a fortress world, every day not spent training is a day wasted, and we don't waste days. The corridors leading out to the yard are buzzing with activity now. I pass a gaggle of fresh-faced youths, white shields, new conscripts with unadorned white pauldrons, hustling by with training lost guns, almost as big as they are. I see the mix of eagerness and nerves in their eyes. It takes me back to my own first muster, 15 years ago now. I was born here, raised on tales of heroism and sacrifice, taught to field strip a lost gun before I could read. One of my earliest memories is of crouching in a basement bunker during a raid when I was about 5 or 6 years old. The sirens were wailing, distant explosions thumping as dust rained from the ceiling. I was terrified, a scrawny little kid clutching a stuffed servo doll until my father pressed a last pistol into my tiny hands. Not to shoot, but to field strip. "Anything to keep you busy and calm, son," he had whispered. Under the flickering emergency lumens, he guided me through disassembling and reassembling that sidearm over and over. By the time the all clear sounded, I could take that pistol apart blindfolded, and I'd nearly forgotten my fear. Where's of you? Looking back, that's life on a fortress world in a nutshell. Fear is overcome by focus, panic beaten down by preparation. And still, on my first actual day in uniform as a cadet years later, I remember shaking like a leaf in a rat storm. But you adapt fast, or you die. And I didn't plan on dying young. Outside, the drill yard sprawls around the base of one of our main bastions, a towering monolith of rocket and steel, looming against the dull purple morning sky. The yard's ground is churned dirt with scorch marks and crater pocks from countless exercises. Rows of targets and obstacles are already set up. All around, squads are forming up. I spot our platoon sergeant up ahead, bellowing at some poor souls as usual. Sergeant Kovas, a bear of a man with a bionic left eye and an augmentic arm, has a voice that could make a space marine feel like a chasing schoolboy. "Form up, you miserable grows herders," Kovas roars. 2 lines, weapons checked and spirits high. "It's a beautiful day for a battle, Emperor. Bless it." I jog to my place with Laron at my side. We line up amid 40-odd soldiers of our company. Many are veterans of real engagements, interspersed with those only a year or 2 past White Shield age. That mix keeps us on our toes, experience bleeding into fresh blood, and fresh blood giving the old hands some occasionally dark amusement. Kovas stalks down the line, inspecting each of us, barking the occasional critique. "Loose strap here, unshined boot there." He stops in front of me, and I snap to attention, trying not to meet that glowing red augmentic eye of his. For a moment, I imagine he can see right through me, checking if I got enough sleep, or if I'm secretly terrified today might be the day. But all he says is, "Trooper, is that a stain on your last gun?" I blink and glance at the weapon in my hands. There's a dark smudge near the muzzle from last night's patrol. "Residual carbon scoring from the night watch, sir," I answer crisply. Kovas' organic eye narrows. Did I ask for excuses? "No, sir, my spine is poker straight. I'll have it cleaned by next assembly, sir." He holds my gaze a second longer, then cracks the ghost of what might be a smile. "See that you do. A clean weapon reflects a clean soul, trooper." He thumps a heavy hand on my shoulder. Something like a fatherly gesture. "If your father was an green drill master, at least you didn't leave your power pack uncharged like last time." I flush a bit at the memory of that particular chewing out. "Won't happen again, Sergeant." Satisfied, Kovas moves on, growling at the next soldier about lint on their collar. Laron shoots me a sidelong look of relief that he didn't notice her slight limp. Her old leg injury tends to act up in the cold mornings. She lucked out. Kovas' bionic eye is on the other side. Inspection done. We begin exercises. It's second nature by now. March, drill, live fire practice, hand-to-hand sparring. The usual regimen. The yard soon echoes with the cracks of lost guns, as we fire at pop-up targets on the far wall. Targets served as were, and slide fresh plates into place after each volley. My shots are on target today. A tight grouping sent a mass on a dummy painted like some snarling orc, with that actual greenkins, stood still with convenient bullseyes on them. Lauren next to me vaporizes the head of her target with smug precision. Show off. We run through formation drills, next squads darting from cover to cover, coordinating fields of fire. I vault over a sandbag barricade and drop into prone position as we simulate repelling a charge. The muscles in my arms burn as I hurl myself over obstacles and sprint across open ground. Within an hour, I'm sweating despite the morning chill and the dusting of earlier bombardment grit still clinging to my hair. It's grueling physical work, but I won't complain. These drills have saved my life more than once when practice turned to reality. During a short break, I gulp from my canteen and survey the scene. Beyond the yard, I see the parapets of the outer wall bristling with defense turrets. Further out across the scarred plain, the first light of day reveals a horizon lined with razor wire and tank traps. Further still, the distant silhouettes of automated sentry guns stand like lonely sentinels in the haze. It's a harsh vista, but to me, it's home. I've never set foot off. Aegis 7. Some off-worlders might find this oppressive, but I find a strange comfort in the strength of these defenses. They make me feel like whatever comes maybe, just maybe, will hold. Still, I know better than to get complacent. Fort Imperator has withstood decades of assault, but nothing and nowhere in this galaxy is truly impregnable. Cadia thought it was safe behind its pylons and legions, and we all know how that ended. That lesson is etched into every one of us here. Our regimental banners bear the unofficial motto, "Remember Cadia." We paint it on our barricades, on our hearts. It's why we never skip a day's training, why we pour our blood and sweat into readiness. Because the alternative is pouring it out in defeat later. One way or another, you'll pay in blood. Better to spend a little early and be ready. By the time the pale sun has crept a bit higher, a wan disk behind the smog layer, the morning exercises wind down. Sergeant Kovus calls us to attention for final remarks. Not bad. Not bad, he grunts as if the praise pains him. A few of the white shields look properly abashed. One poor kid actually did faint midway through the obstacle course, until a medic stem got him back on his feet. Now he stands quivering at attention, desperate not to attract Kovus's eye. Kovus makes a point of locking his real eye onto that boy. Feeling rested now, trooper? Snars. The youth stammers. Perhaps next time the enemy attacks, we'll set up CS&T for you first. Kovus snaps. A ripple of subdued chuckles runs through us veterans, and the boy's face goes red as an Vidian's eye. Kovus silences our mirth with a glare. Laugh it up, you vultures. Any of you pushed harder, you'd be face down in the mud too. He continues pacing, voice rising. Only saw 3 of you collapse this time. In fact, one was that kid fainting, another trooper twisted her ankle, and the third was a hefty fellow who simply ran out of steam. But she'll be fine, already limped off with an elm clucking over her. Remember, Cove continues, sweeping his gaze over us. Discipline and constant vigilance are what keep you alive, not your pretty faces, not blind luck. Out here on Aegis 7, you are the wall that stands between the Emperor's domain and the abyss. Act like it every single day. Understood, we shout in unison. Sir.
Sir. Routine words drilled into our bones, but we mean them. Covus gives a sharp nod. Dismissed. Those on patrol duty, gear up and move out in 15. Those on manufacturing shift, get to it. The rest of you stand by and stay sharp. As the formation breaks up, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Muscles aching, stomach growling again. Unitorum growl only goes so far. I consider the day ahead. Let's see. I'm not on patrol until this evening, and my shift at the manufacturing assembly line doesn't start till after midday, which means I have a few precious hours of what passes for free time. A rare luxury. I might grab a quick shower to wash off the gunpowder grime, or find a quiet corner to write a letter home. My older brother Torin is off-world serving in the Astra Militarum. Emperor knows where. Some jungle death world fighting emperor knows what. Last I heard, it's been a while since I wrote to him. Maybe an astropathic reply from him even arrived with last night's courier batch. I decide to head toward the communications bunker to check if any mail came in and to pen a message if not. The comm station is on the way back to the HF blocks anyway, and it gives me an excuse to linger near one of the few Vox terminals with off-world linkage. Not that we rank and file can use those freely. Mostly, it's for official dispatches, but sometimes the astropaths will send personal letters if there's room as a morale booster. Can't hurt to try. Walking through Fort Imperator after morning drill almost feels peaceful. If you ignore the fortifications, people are out and about. Labor crews heading to the factoriums, tech priests tottering off to the power plants. A column of Scholar Progenium students being marched by a stern-looking Sister Superior toward the chapel for daily prayers. Life goes on in its regimented way. The streets, more like fortified boulevards, are lined with towering HF blocks on one side and rock-creep barricades on the other. The walls are emblazoned with motivational slogans in bold high Gothic. Faith is our shield. The Emperor protects. That one's everywhere. Duty ends only in death. I've walked this route countless times, but today there's a prickling at the base of my neck as I pass an armored statue of Saint Dominica, a massive stone figure of a battle sister holding a bolt gun, doubly serving as a heavy bolted turret mount. Something feels off. Maybe it's just adrenaline lingering from the drills, or my imagination fueled by Jean's rumor earlier. I scan around. Everything looks normal, yet that itch between my shoulder blades won't go away. I glance skyward, habitually checking for the glint of our orbital defense platform. It's there, a bright speck moving slowly across the stratosphere. Good. Our eye in the sky, always watchful. Then I catch a whiff of something acrid on the wind. Not the usual promethium or ozone. I can't place it. Shaking my head, I carry on. When I reach the communications bunker, a squat, heavily reinforced structure near the central keep, I nod to the Vox officer on duty, a gaunt fellow named Rorker. We know each other well enough to trade casual salutes. He sits behind thick plastile glass in a chamber full of humming coitators and incense burners. The tech priests insist on those to appease the machine spirits. Any astropathic mail today? I ask through the speaking grill. Rorker scrolls through a data slate. Let's see. Inbound letters from Bellatrax 4 and some administratum backlog from Sector Command. Personal correspondence. Aha. Got a packet of guard letters.
Expecting anything, just hoping. So, seeing my name in Torin's scroll lifts my spirits immensely. The envelope is creased and a bit stained. The message probably took months and several relay ships to reach me, but it's here by the throne. You want to send a reply? Roar asks in his flat drawer. I nod, tucking the letter carefully into my inner jacket pocket. Absolutely. I'll write one up and drop it off by this evening. If that's all right, He grunts something that passes for assent and turns back to his Vox panel, already dealing with another transmission. As he does, I notice a frown crease his forehead. One of the runes on his console is blinking urgently. Something wrong? I begin to ask, seeing his puzzled expression, before he can answer. A sudden brass of an alarm klaxon splits the air. This one, no drill. Its urgent rising falling wail is unmistakable. Every muscle in my body tenses on reflex. All personnel to action stations. This is not a drill, booms a voice over every loud hailer, as if we needed that clarified in a heartbeat. The fortress becomes an overturned anthill of activity. The corridors I walked in, relative calm moments ago, now flood with soldiers sprinting to posts, civilian workers rushing to designated shelter vaults or arming up to join the defense auxiliaries. On Aegis 7, if you can hold a gun, you're part of the defense auxiliaries. I curse under my breath. Adrenaline surging so fast it washes away the morning's fatigue. So much for a quiet day. We always knew something would come eventually. Something always does, but it still catches you mid-stride. I cinch my flak vest tighter, jam on my helmet, and break into a run toward my assigned defense sector. Duty roster. Duty roster. Right this week, I'm on the western wall fire. Iloran and Anelm should be headed there too, along with the rest of our platoon to man the ramparts. Emperor on Earth, the west approach. Not that any section of wall is safe, but I remember the intel briefings. Over the past month, picket ships reported fleeting contacts and radar signals on the system's edge. A possible pirate band, or maybe orcs sniffing around. Command wasn't certain. Looks like we're about to find out. My boots pound the furity as I join a throng of PDF troopers rushing the same way. We funnel through an archway where servitors are already cranking open the thick blast doors leading out to the curtain wall. The klaxons continue their relentless whoop-whoop, accompanied now by the distant thud of our defense guns swiving into tracking positions. I catch the ozone whiff of void shield projectors spooling up to full power, their energy fields crackling faintly overhead. Move it, move it, move it. A junior officer hollers, waving us through the gate. I recognize Lieutenant Varro, face set in a grim scowl under his cap. He's a decent sword, not one of those puffed-up parade ground peacocks. And right now, he looks as serious as I've ever seen him. Emerging onto the battlements, the scale of the situation hits me. The fortress wall stretches out on either side, bristling with heavy stubbers, auto-cannons, and missile nests manned by crews trying to look 10 different directions at once. Far across the plains, just visible through the morning haze, are dozens of streaking contrails in the sky, like meteors descending. Emperor have mercy, those are inbound craft. Landing craft or drop pods leaving fiery trails as they punch through atmosphere. And there are a lot of them. For a second, cold dread roots me to the spot. This is not a minor raid. This looks like an army making planet full. But training kicks in well honed by years of mornings, just like this. Count targets, gauge distance, identify vectors. I force myself to scan methodically. The incoming cluster is concentrated toward the west-southwest plain. There, the land is flattest, an ideal landing zone for an enemy. I also see a few glints higher up, maybe fighter bombers or gunships escorting whatever is dropping. My Vox speed crackles, and I hear Sergeant Cover's grady voice cut through the den on our platoon channel. All right, you lot, you see him. Those look like greenskin drop craft by the patterns. Orcs are coming to pay us a visit. Orcs, of course, it's orcs.
My stomach does a little flip of anxiety and oddly relief, because orcs at least are a known horror. Could have been worse. Could have been chaos demons, or throne forbid tyrannids. Orcs, though they're almost comfortingly straightforward in their brutality. They want to rush in and hit us. Fine, we have ways to hit back. I sprint along the battlement to my assigned firing position. Lauren is already there, unfolding the tripod of a heavy bolter with 2 others from our squad. She's barking about feed mechanisms and fields of fire. All business. I don't see an elm yet. Medics muster separately, lightly below prepping aid stations. I racked the slide on my M36 last gun, double-checking the charge. Battery full, safety off, heart hammering, but hands steady. Down below, out on the plain, pillars of dust are rising where some of those landing craft have already impacted. Through my scope, I can make out specks swarming around those impact sites. Moments later, a distant staccato of heavy gunfire carries to us on the wind. Could be our perimeter teams engaging or orcs firing off as soon as they disembark. Probably both. The air on the wall crackles with intensity, an electric cocktail of fear and adrenaline. Troopers line the crenellations, bracing heavy guns or aiming rifles through firing slits. Officers shout last-second orders. Along the rampart to my left, a crew is loading a shoulder-mount crack missile into a launcher, knuckles white around the tube. To my right, a gunner fingers the spade grips of a stubber, eyes glued on the horizon. Steady, Lieutenant Vark calls from a higher observation point. Wait for them to close, then give him hell. I catch a glimpse of our commissar, iron-jawed and coat flapping as he paces behind the line. Commissar Brandt's bolt pistol is already in hand, a not-so-subtle promise of what happens if any of us loses our nerve. None of us have any intention of earning his eye today. Not with stakes like this. In the distance a brazen warhorn blah, a long braiding note followed by guttural howls. The orcs are announcing themselves as if the fiery entry wasn't clue enough. Moments later, the first of their improvised vehicles comes into view through the dust careening toward us. Even from here, I see the dust plume and hear the faint wow of revving engines and wild gunfire. It's a medley assortment, Durig buggies and half-tracks foamed with scrap metal and spewing oily smoke. They bounce over our outer tank traps, guns blazing indiscriminately. Behind them, dark masses of orc infantry are becoming visible hordes of green-skinned brutes on foot, rushing forward and firing as they run. Muzzle flash is flickering like a swarm of fireflies in a storm. My mouth is dry. The outer minefields start detonating sharp crumps, sending gouts of dirt and orc limbs skyward as the first wave blunders in. A few cheers go up along our wall for each distant explosion, quickly drowned by the roar of our own heavy guns. As the range closes, our forward emplacements open up first. A battery of quad laser cannons on the ground level lets loose with a searing volley. I track one bright beam, lancing out and spearing an onrushing orc war buggy. Its front half explodes in a fireball, sending the rest cartwheeling. A chorus of deeper thumps signals our basilisk artillery farther back, hurling shells downrange. They whistle overhead and wham! A column of dirt and flame erupts amid a cluster of orcs nearly a kilometer out. Bits of metal, and who knows what scatter high. The orcs keep coming through magnulas or scopes. The view is equal parts terrifying and absurd. Hundreds of hulking figures bounding across no man's land. Some carrying big shooters that spew inaccurate fire in our direction. Others swinging crude axes and cleavers as they run. They wear mishmash armor, if you can call bits of scrap and welded plates armor. and many sport garish war paint or glyphs on their green hides. Amid them bigger knobs bellow and whip the horde onward. It's a primal, furious sight. Finally the order we've waited for comes. Fire at will. I set my cheek to my last gun and pick my first target. A particularly large orc lumbering ahead of its fellows, waving a totem pole topped with a human skull. Probably some kind of mob leader. Emperor, guide my aim. I squeeze the trigger. The last gun kicks lightly, and a bright red beam lances out, catching the big orc square in the chest. He staggers, then howls. Whether in pain or just more rage, I can't tell. I fire again and again, stitching glowing impacts across his torso. The brute is bleeding and smoldering, yet still on his feet. So much for the uplifting field manual's claim that an orc will falter after a solid hit. Whoever wrote that never met this one. On my fifth shot, I hit something vital. The orc finally topples with a crash, banner and all around me. Hundreds of lost guns have opened up, creating a deadly lattice-work of energy, lacing into the oncoming tide. The roar of battle swells to a thunderous full pitch. Our heavy bolters chuck, 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 pouring explosive rounds into clusters of orcs, each impact popping bodies like overripe fruit. The auto cannons hammer out rhythmic thumps, punching through orc scrap vehicles like paper. The enemy returns fire in a disorganized storm. Tracers from ramshackle orc guns ricochet off our parapets or whiz overhead. One of those solid slugs hits the crenellation a meter from me, showering my shoulder with chips of rocket. I grit my teeth and keep firing. Far below, some orc rockets, basically crude unguided missiles, whoosh upward. Most sail past or detonate harmlessly in midair. One crashes against the wall with a jarring whump, shaking the section of parapet not far from Lauren's heavy bolter team. She flinches but keeps her focus, yelling for more ammo as her gun chews through an orc mob, attempting to use a wrecked truck as cover. Orc bodies are piling up in front of our defenses, but still they come, clambering over their own dead. A war horn blasts again from the plains and new shapes emerge from the dust clouds, fast-moving silhouettes on roaring engines. Orc war bikers, their wheels kicking up plumes as they flank their slower foot sloggers. A gang of them zips toward our northwestern quadrant, firing wildly and tossing crude stick bombs. One bike is hit by our auto cannon and explodes in a fireball, cartwheeling its rider across the dirt. Two more keep going, weaving between craters. Incoming war bikes, Sector 12. Someone shouts. I pivot and send a burst of last fire at the closest one as it jinks, but it's moving too erratically for me to land a solid hit from this range. Alaskan team on the wall to my right has better luck and incandescent beam spears out and tags the second bike, blowing it to scrap. The last bike actually makes it all the way to our outer wire. The orc rider, crazed on speed and bloodlust, hits a buried mine just beyond the fence line and is launched skyward in a gout of flame, landing in pieces. That earns a brief cheer from those manning that sector. Suddenly, an ear-splitting whoosh followed by a cobworm rocks the battlements under my feet. I duck instinctively as a fireball blossoms two gun emplacements over an orc artillery shell or looted tank round must.
Have found its mark. I peek up, flames lick at a mangled heavy bolter turret, and I see two figures down, not moving. Medics will have to wait until the barrage lets up to reach them. My heart seizes at the sight of fallen comrades. but I force the fear down. War now, worry later. Keep up the fire, I yell half to myself. The orcs are about 300 meters out now and closing in spurts using craters and wreckage as crude cover, albeit not very effectively. I sight an orc with a rocket launcher in their parlance, setting up behind a wrecked buggy. Can't have that. I squeeze off several shots. The first couple patter the buggy's rusted plating, but one catches the orc in the face. Its metal helmet flies off, and the beast crumples. A moment later, the whole buggy is consumed in a violent blast. Whether a stray shot hit its fuel or the orc's own rocket misfired, I don't know, but I'll take the win. Beside me, Lauren's team has their heavy bolter thumping steadily, cutting down swaths of orcs with each sweeping burst. The belt feed rattles as it slurps round after round into the hungry weapon. Brass shell casings clink onto the ground around their feet. Pine, the gunner, has a crazed grin on her face as she hammers the trigger in controlled bursts. The orcs that were trying to rush a gap in the wire are now smears of red and green pulp. Despite our punishing fire, the greenkins press on, utterly heedless of losses. Many are dying. Oh yes, our fields of fire are exacting a tremendous toll. The approach is littered with their corpses and burning scrap heaps. But orcs don't really grasp the concept of retreat or fear. They only seem to get more excited by the carnage. A formation of orc storm boys suddenly rockets into the sky on the left flank, drawing startled shouts. These lunatics strap literal rockets to their backs to launch themselves over defenses. Sure enough, a half-dozen smoke trails arc upward as the storm boys ignite their boosters with a whooping howl. Our flak guns pivot and pepper the sky. Two of those trails spiral and crash as the orcs are blown apart mid-air. But one trajectory comes screaming straight toward our section of wall, too fast to intercept. I hear a guttural cry above as an orc hurdles over the parapet in a streak of sparks. He slams down onto the walkway just a few meters to my left with a tremendous crash of metal on stone, cracking the plastile tiles. The brute is somehow still intact, rocket pack sputtering on his back. Before anyone can react, he swings a massive chopper blade and cleaves the nearest guardsman clean through the torso. The poor fellow gurgles and falls in two pieces. Another soldier lunges with a bayonet, but the orc backhands him with a spiked gauntlet, sending the man sprawling with what looks like continued. The orc backhands the bayonet-wielding soldier, sending him crashing into the crenellation with a sickening crack. I see blood and know his spine's likely done. For a heartbeat, I'm frozen by the sudden carnage unfolding at arm's length. This brute is on our wall, roaring and laying about with that massive rusted blade, and our line recoils in shock, but only for a heartbeat. Training and survival instinct surge forth. With a furious shout, three of us converge on the storm boy from different angles, bayonets and combat knives drawn. The orc swings at one of my squad mates. She ducks narrowly, the axe whooshing overhead. I dart in low, driving my bayonet into the orc's side with all my strength. Lauren empties her sidearm into the orc's faceplate at point-blank range, sparks flying from the impacts. The hulking brute staggers, dark blood spraying from the wound I've opened under its arm. It howls in rage, backhanding me hard. I tumble to the deck, seeing stars, before the orc can recover to swing again. A focused last burst from someone, bless that unknown sharpshooter, spears through the side of its skull. The orc's howl cuts off, replaced by a gurgle.
It sways, axe dropping from nerveless fingers, then topples backward over the parapet, its rocket pack sputtering as the corpse plummets to the blood-soaked ground below. I scrambled to my feet, chest heaving. The whole struggle lasted maybe 5 seconds, but my hands are trembling, and my heart feels ready to burst. There's no time to dwell on it. Dozens more orcs are still surging at us across no man's land. Emperor knows that single Stormboy was a fluke that any made it up here alive. We tighten our formation, and I notice a couple of nearby troopers silently dragging the bodies of our fallen comrades back from the firing line. My jaw sets. One of them is old Janan. I catch a glimpse of his lifeless face as they pull him away, and it hits me like a punch to the gut. The man who joked over recaf with me, not an hour ago now, lies crumpled in a pool of his own blood. I bite down hard. There will be time to grieve later, if I survive. Down in the killing field, the orc tide finally begins to ebb. The constant zap crump of our guns, the carpet of mines, the sheer walls, they're taking a toll even the orcs can't ignore. I notice far fewer green figures moving now. The press of bodies thins broken vehicles, form smoking barricades that the ones behind have to climb over. Between our disciplined defense and the heaps of their dead choking the approach, the momentum of the assault is petering out. Fearless as orcs are, they still have a threshold of pain, or at least decapitation, after which even they lose heart. In fact, moments ago I glimpsed one especially enormous orc bed in spiked mega armor, and bellowing at his hawk abruptly vanish in a plume of fire when one of our basilisk shells landed square on his position. 1 second he was there roaring and waving a powered claw the size of a man. The next nothing remained but a smoking crater. That must have dented their enthusiasm. I suspect that was their war boss. With him gone and so many of them dead, the rest of the greenkins begin to falter. What had been a full-throated wall a few minutes ago is now a disjointed brawl. Some smaller knots of orcs keep shooting or hacking at obstacles, but many are just milling in confusion, leaderless. A few turn and trot back toward their drop zones, perhaps to regroup or simply because they've had enough. It isn't an organized retreat by any means. Orcs don't really do organized, but the assault is definitely broken. A ragged cheer rises along our wall as the remaining orcs start to pull back out of effective small arms range. A handful of diehards refuse to retreat and are cut down against the wire or base of the wall by well-placed shots. I permit myself to breathe for what feels like the first time in ages. Emperor, be praised. We held them. We held. Kova's voice snaps in my ear. Still on comms. Cease fire but stay alert. Sweep your sectors for any stragglers. Our heavy weapons fall silent. One by one, those sporadic last shots ring out as we finish off wounded orcs crawling about below. The fortress vox casters blare a triumphant cadence, signaling the enemy is in flight. All along the ramparts, soldiers sag against cover or each other, exhaustion and relief crashing together. I peer cautiously over the edge. The terrain beyond is a hellscape of craters, flames and carpeted corpses. Black smoke rises from dozens of wrecks. The few orcs that survived are in full rout or limping away, howling in frustration. Let them run. The plain between here and their drop zone is littered with so many bodies and scrap. They'll be lucky to escape at all, and our artillery is still plinking at the horizon to hurry them along. For the first time in perhaps an hour, though it felt like 10, I take my finger off the trigger. My arms feel like lead, my throat raw from shouting over the den. Beside me, Lauren is slumped against the parapet, her face in armor spattered with orc, her chest heaving. She caught a piece of shrapnel in her thigh. At some point, a jagged shard of metal protrudes from her right leg armor, and blood darkens the cloth around it. In the adrenaline haze, she hadn't even noticed, but now she winces. Emperor on Earth, she mutters, gingerly, tightening a tornet above the wound. Medic teams arrive within minutes to tend the wounded. Anselm appears out of the smoke like a phantom immediately at Lauren's side with a hypoderm and field dressings. "I'll live, Doc," she protests weakly, but she doesn't resist when he snaps the shard off and injects her with coagulant. I clap a hand on her shoulder in solidarity. We're alive, battered and bloodied, but alive. Kovas is already prowling our section of wall, clapping soldiers on the back gruffly and barking, refit and reload, check for wounded. This isn't over until I say so. He may be a twint, but Emperor knows he's effective. I see Lieutenant Varro down at the courtyard, speaking urgently into a Vox set, likely reporting our success or calling for reserve units to sweep outside for any live orcs to finish off. I glance to my right and see two troopers gently laying a tarp over Jan's body, and the others who fell. A pang hits my chest. We paid for this victory in blood as always, but we did it. I whisper a quick prayer under my breath. Emperor, receive their souls. They fought bravely. The fortress loudspeakers crackle, and a new sound replaces the alarm. An uplifting march tune and the voice of our herald officer announcing, "All clear. Enemy assault repelled. Remain at battle readiness." A weary cheer echoes along the wall. Some of the veterans light up sticks with shaky hands, adrenaline come down, hitting hard. I allow myself a gulp from my canteen and a moment to lean against the parapet. We spend the next few minutes in a daze of activity and adrenaline-fogged relief. Water canisters are brought up and passed around. I pour some over my face and drink the rest greedily, washing the grit from my mouth. Down below, our support crews and combat servitors are already venturing out through the sally ports to police the field, shooting any twitching orc bodies, collecting enemy weapons to be destroyed, and rescuing any of our own wounded who got knocked off the wall or caught outside. Nearby, a few troopers laugh in abrupt, almost hysterical relief. One of the heavy bolter loaders who survived yells after the fleeing orcs, "Yeah, run and don't come."
Presses a hand to the bead in his ear, listening. Then his face goes a shade paler. He turns and shouts, voice amplified by urgency, "Stand to! Stand to! New targets incoming!" Different vector. A collective groan of disbelief rises from our line. A second attack now. Some troopers glance at each other, like, "You got to be kidding." But the discipline holds. Weapons are hastily recharged or swapped for fresh ones. Wounded, who can still fight, grit their teeth and return to firing steps. As for me, I slam a fresh power pack into my last gun and get back into position, heart pounding with renewed dread. Emperor, preserve us, what now? Lauren, eyes wide with incredule, spits. Already. What in the hell could it be this time? She snaps the last words as she forces herself upright, wincing, but there's no time for complaint. We all scramble to ready status, peering out at the ruined plain and the skies beyond. We scan the horizon in the direction indicated, southwest by west, the orcs' smoking wreckage
still dominates the foreground. For a moment, I see nothing else. Then I feel it, before I see it. A weird pressure in the air, a subtle ringing in my ears that wasn't there a second ago. An intangible heaviness seems to blanket the field. Weird, do you feel that? I shout to no one, in particular. Some of the vets do. I see a few exchanging uneasy looks. It's like the static before a storm, but charged with something malignant. Our sanctioned psyker, stationed near command, suddenly shrieks and collapses, attendants rushing to restrain him as he froths at the mouth. That sends a ripple of pure fright through the nearby ranks. We know what that portends. Only one foe does that to a psyker, even before the Vox call comes through. I think I know. A chill runs down my spine as I focus my binoculars on the far sky. The smoky clouds are thinning, and beyond them, I glimpse new shapes high above. They are distinctly unlike the bright streaks of orc dropcraft. These are darker, almost organic silhouettes, and they are dropping fast. Varro's amplified shout confirms it a second later. Enemy biosignatures, inbound. Tyranids, chive fleet, organisms closing from above. Tyranids, my blood runs cold. I hear someone curse, someone pray. Even Kovas mutters an oath. Orcs and Tyranids on the same day. Emperor have mercy. What cosmic joke is this? A stunned moment of incredulity passes through us like a gust of wind. And then, true to form, we harden our resolve. There's no time to question fate. If the great devourer has come to call, then by the throne we'll show it a proper bloody welcome. All guns, retarget and load incendiaries. Air defense, fire at will. Lieutenant Varro commands over the Vox, voice tight but controlled. The fortress Auspex is now pinging frantically with multiple incoming contacts. I see our Hydra flak cannons swiving almost frenetically to track the descending swarm of blips. Up in the sky, I finally get a clear visual. Countless black shapes from spore-like peas, is the size of drop pods. Two winged creatures gliding alongside them are raining down beyond our outer perimeter. The sight is eerie. No flames or engine flares like before. Just a rain of Kitana's death falling silently, but swiftly. High above, I glimpse larger shadows. Perhaps the bioships in low orbit disgorging their cargo, or one of their gargantuan spores. A deep resonant hum vibrates through the air. The shadow in the warp pressing on every soul. Our astropaths must be screaming over the Voxid. I catch fragments of panicked babble. Warp interference off the scale. Mass spores in atmosphere. Emperor, protect us. Then it begins. The Tyranid spores slam to ground in and around the same areas the orcs hit, as well as further out across the western approaches. Within moments from each impact site, swarms of nightmare creatures pour forth. I spot at least a dozen points where huge mice spore pods landed just beyond our defensive wire. Already their fleshy surfaces rip open and disgorge hordes of scuttling forms. Through my scope I see them clearly. Ormagoans live Exenos sprinting on scythe-like limbs and turrigans stopping to fire flesh-bored beetles from the living guns grafted to their arms. They surge out like disturbed ants, instantly spreading and seeking prey. Further back, I glimpse taller silhouettes. Tyranid warriors directing the lesser beasts with hisses and shrieks. Emperor on Earth, an actual Hive Fleet splinter force is ground assaulting us, right on the heels of an orc invasion. It's almost unthinkable, yet here it is. Our western guns, Some, still hot from the orc fight, resume firing with renewed urgency. Heavy bolters and autocannons rake the chitinous tide, blowing apart clusters of gaunts by the dozen. The ground outside becomes a writhing killing field again, but the Tyranids move fast, inhumanly fast. Within a minute of landing, some are already at the outer perimeter, using craters and wreckage left courtesy of the orcs as cover to scuttle closer. Burn them, comes in order. Our support teams pivot. Flamers stationed at wall embraces spew gouts of promethium downward, turning sections of ground into blazing infernos, as screeching gaunts run straight into napalm-slick death. The air fills with an awful mix of smells: charred alien flesh, a sour sweet stench, and an acidic tang that catches in the throat. A series of loud boom 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 reports signals our distant Manticore missile tanks joining the fray. Streaks of incendiary rockets roar out and impact among the denser clusters of the swarm, blossoming into fireballs that incinerate dozens of creatures at a time. For a fleeting moment, I feel a surge of optimism that we might blast this second wave to ash just as efficiently as the first. Then a horrific screech pierces the air, rising above the cacophony. Over the far ridge, a hulking monstrosity comes into view, barreling forward on 4 massive limbs and crashing through the remnants of an orc troop as if it were kindling. A Carnix as a living battering ram, all bony plates and muscle, lets out another ear-splitting roar as it locks onto our fortress walls. Emperor, save us. It's charging the west gate directly. A thundering avalanche of claws and spikes. Our anti-tank gunners adjust fire immediately. Crack missiles on that big one, Varro yells. 2 trails of smoke whoosh out from atop the wall and spiral toward the Carnifex. One missile impacts its shoulder, blowing off a chunk of carapace. The beast shrieks but does not slow. The second missile veers wide and explodes in a cloud of dirt. Laskinen's lance out next, scoring sizzling holes in the creature's torso, but it only seems to enrage it further. Like an ancient Terran bull, the Carnifex charges headlong, closing the last hundreds of meters, frighteningly fast. Despite the pounding it's taking, it guns straight for the section of wall at the main gate. Of course, it would likely drawn by instinct to the largest target. Brace gate impact imminent. Someone shouts on the vox. I grit my teeth. The void shields above are useless against a physical ground battering like this. With a thunderous crash, the Carnifex slams into the west gate. The whole fortress wall shutters under the impact. The massive adamantine doors, already scarred from orc explosives earlier, buckle inward. With a tortured metallic shriek, masonry dust rains on us. A collective gasp goes through our side. Beyond that gate are the inner city, and shelters where our civilians, my own mother among them, huddle in fear. We cannot let the Xenos breach through. As the Carnifex backs up to run again, our defenders redouble fire. A crew on the wall directly above the gate empties a full autocannon magazine into the beast's broad back, blasting off plating and Ika. Another crack missile whooshes out and strikes true, blowing off one of the creature's sidearms in the spray of green gore. The Carnifex rears, bellowing in agony, but then charges forward once more in a kamikaze fury. Boom! The second hit is even worse. With a sound of rending metal, the west gate splits open. One half of the door torn free of its hinges entirely. The Carnifex forces its bulk halfway through the gap before finally collapsing. Its thick armor riddled with smoking craters, and its brains blown out by a point-blank lesson shot from the gatehouse. The behemoth dies, blocking the gateway. It has destroyed an horrific plug of flesh jammed in a shattered dam. For a moment, a stunned silence broken only by the chitter of smaller tyranids and the crackle of fires. They've breached our outer gate, but the dead carnifex is now wedged in it, effectively a grotesque barrier. However, that also means we can't easily shut the gate. Now there's a gaping hole partly filled by a corpse, and around its edges I already see smaller tyranid creatures swarming, hacking at the carcass or clambering over it to squeeze through. All units contain that breach. Immediately, reserve squads rush to reinforce the gatehouse interior and murder halls. I'm above and slightly to the side of the gate, looking down into the courtyard beyond. It's chaos. Dozens of hormones slip through gaps around the carnifex corpse and drop into the courtyard where our second-line interior guard troopers and off-duty PDF, who armed themselves when the alarm sounded, engaged them in brutal close combat. Through the swirling dust, I spot a flash of power sword and the bark of a bolt pistol. Our commissar has joined the fray below, personally leading a countercharge to keep the bugs contained at the choke point. From my angle on the wall, I angle my lost gun almost straight down and start picking off tyranids scrambling over the carcass before they can add to the melee inside. Its tricky targets are half obscured by the massive dead carnif effects and the flicker of failing gatehouse void shields, but I manage to peg 2 gaunts in the skull, dropping them as they try to wriggle through a gap. Some defenders are rolling Promethean drums off the wall, creating ad hoc firebombs at the breach. Womp flames gush as a drum explodes, engulfing a knot of bugs in sticky incendiary. Screeches of alien agony emanate from below. For a moment, it looks like we might hold the gate rupture with these desperate measures. Then an ear-splitting hiss like the world's largest snake comes from above us. Before I can react, something long and impossibly fast slithers over the parapet just a few meters to my left. The air shimmers oddly around it. It's as if the creature appeared out of thin air, but I know it must have climbed the wall unseen. Lysa, the lictor, stands tall on our battlements, uncloaking its chitinous body as its camouflage flickers off. It's a nightmare made flesh. 6 limbs, 2 of them massive mantis claws, and a crown of writhing tentacles around a fang-filled maw. In one fluid motion, it impales the nearest guardsman through the chest with a talon. The poor man doesn't even have time to scream. He's lifted off his feet, skewered like meat. Shouts of alarm ring out. Lacquer. Last shots converge, but the creature is devilishly fast. It hurls the corpse off its claw and leaps into a cluster of 3 soldiers sting out left and right. 1 trooper is decapitated on the spot. Another has his throat ripped open by the lictor's feeder tendrils. The 3rd backs away, firing point blank. His shots scorch the lactors.
Presses a hand to the bead in his ear, listening. Then his face goes a shade paler. He turns and shouts. Voice amplified by urgency. Stand to. Stand to. New targets incoming. Different vector. A collective groan of disbelief rises from our line. A second attack now. Some troopers glance at each other, like, you got to be kidding. But the discipline holds. Weapons are hastily recharged or swapped for fresh ones. Wounded, who can still fight, grit their teeth and return to firing steps. As for me, I slam a fresh power pack into my last gun and get back into position, heart pounding with renewed dread. Emperor, preserve us, what now? Lauren, eyes wide with incredule, spits. Already. What in the hell could it be this time? She snaps the last words as she forces herself upright, wincing, but there's no time for complaint. We all scramble to ready status, peering out at the ruined plain and the skies beyond. We scan the horizon in the direction indicated, southwest by west. The orcs' smoking wreckage still dominates the foreground. For a moment, I see nothing else. Then I feel it, before I see it. A weird pressure in the air, a subtle ringing in my ears that wasn't there a second ago. An intangible heaviness seems to blanket the field. Weird, do you feel that? I shout to no one, in particular. Some of the vets do. I see a few exchanging uneasy looks. It's like the static before a storm, but charged with something malignant. Our sanctioned psyker, stationed near command, suddenly shrieks and collapses, attendants rushing to restrain him as he froths at the mouth. That sends a ripple of pure fright through the nearby ranks. We know what that portends. Only one foe does that to a psyker, even before the Vox call comes through. I think I know. A chill runs down my spine as I focus my binoculars on the far sky. The smoky clouds are thinning, and beyond them, I glimpse new shapes high above. They are distinctly unlike the bright streaks of orc dropcraft. These are darker, almost organic silhouettes, and they are dropping fast. Varro's amplified shout confirms it a second later. Enemy biosignatures, inbound. Tyranids, chive fleet, organisms closing from above. Tyranids, my blood runs cold. I hear someone curse, someone pray. Even Kovas mutters an oath. Orcs and Tyranids on the same day. Emperor have mercy. What cosmic joke is this? A stunned moment of incredulity passes through us like a gust of wind. And then, true to form, we harden our resolve. There's no time to question fate. If the great devourer has come to call, then by the throne we'll show it a proper bloody welcome. All guns, retarget and load incendiaries. Air defense, fire at will. Lieutenant Varro commands over the Vox, voice tight but controlled. The fortress Auspex is now pinging frantically with multiple incoming contacts. I see our Hydra flak cannons swiving almost frenetically to track the descending swarm of blips. Up in the sky, I finally get a clear visual. Countless black shapes from spore-like peas is the size of drop pods. Two winged creatures gliding alongside them are raining down beyond our outer perimeter. The sight is eerie. No flames or engine flares like before. Just a rain of chitinous death falling silently, but swiftly. High above, I glimpse larger shadows. Perhaps the bioships in low orbit disgorging their cargo, or one of their gargantuan spores. A deep resonant hum vibrates through the air, the shadow in the warp pressing on every soul. Our astropaths must be screaming over the Voxet. I catch fragments of panicked babble, warp interference off the scale, mass spores in atmosphere. Emperor, protect us. Then it begins. The Tyranid spores slam to ground in and around the same areas the orcs hit, as well as further out across the western approaches. Within moments from each impact site, swarms of nightmare creatures pour forth. I spot at least a dozen points where huge mice spore parts landed just beyond our defensive wire. Already their fleshy surfaces rip open and disgorge hordes of scuttling forms. Through my scope I see them clearly. Ormagoans live Exener sprinting on scythe-like limbs and turrigans stopping to fire flesh-bored beetles from the living guns grafted to their arms. They surge out like disturbed ants, instantly spreading and seeking prey. Further back, I glimpse taller silhouettes.
Tyrannid warriors directing the lesser beasts with hisses and shrieks. Emperor on Earth, an actual Hive Fleet splinter force is ground assaulting us, right on the heels of an Orc invasion. It's almost unthinkable, yet here it is. Our Western guns, some still hot from the Orc fight, resume firing with renewed urgency. Heavy bolters and autocannons rake the chitinous tide, blowing apart clusters of gaunts by the dozen. The ground outside becomes a writhing killing field again, but the Tyrannids move fast, inhumanly fast. Within a minute of landing, some are already at the outer perimeter, using craters and wreckage left courtesy of the Orcs as cover to scuttle closer. Burn them, comes in order. Our support teams pivot. Flamers stationed at wall embraces spew gouts of promethium downward, turning sections of ground into blazing infernos, as screeching gaunts run straight into napalm-slick death. The air fills with an awful mix of smells, charred alien flesh, a sour-sweet stench, and an acidic tang that catches in the throat. A series of loud boom 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 reports signals our distant Manticore missile tanks joining the fray. Streaks of incendiary rockets roar out and impact among the denser clusters of the swarm, blossoming into fireballs that incinerate dozens of creatures at a time. For a fleeting moment, I feel a surge of optimism that we might blast this second wave to ash just as efficiently as the first. Then a horrific screech pierces the air, rising above the cacophony. Over the far ridge, a hulking monstrosity comes into view, barreling forward on four massive limbs and crashing through the remnants of an Orc troop as if it were kindling. A Carnix as a living battering ram, all bony plates and muscle, lets out another ear-splitting roar as it locks onto our fortress walls. Emperor, save us. It's charging the west gate directly. A thundering avalanche of claws and spikes. Our anti-tank gunners adjust fire immediately. Crack missiles on that big one, Varro yells. Two trails of smoke whoosh out from atop the wall and spiral toward the Carnifex. One missile impacts its shoulder, blowing off a chunk of carapace. The beast shrieks but does not slow. The second missile veers wide and explodes in a cloud of dirt. Laskanin's lance out next, scoring sizzling holes in the creature's torso, but it only seems to enrage it further. Like an ancient Terran bull, the Carnifex charges headlong, closing the last hundreds of meters, frighteningly fast. Despite the pounding it's taking, it guns straight for the section of wall at the main gate. Of course, it would likely drawn by instinct to the largest target. Brace gate impact imminent. Someone shouts on the Vox. I grit my teeth. The void shields above are useless against a physical ground battering like this. With a thunderous crash, the Carnifex slams into the west gate. The whole fortress wall shutters under the impact. The massive adamantine doors, already scarred from Orc explosives earlier, buckle inward. With a tortured metallic shriek, masonry dust rains on us. A collective gasp goes through our side. Beyond that gate are the inner city, and shelters where our civilians, my own mother among them, huddle in fear. We cannot let the Xenos breach through. As the Carnifex backs up to run again, our defenders redouble fire. A crew on the wall directly above the gate empties a full autocannon magazine into the beast's broad back, blasting off plating and Eka. Another crack missile whooshes out and strikes true, blowing off one of the creature's sidearms in the spray of green gore. The Carnifex rears, bellowing in agony, but then charges forward once more in a kamikaze fury. Boom! The second hit is even worse. With a sound of rending metal, the west gate splits open. one half of the door torn free of its hinges entirely. The carnifex forces its bulk halfway through the gap before finally collapsing. Its thick armor riddled with smoking craters, and its brains blown out by a point-blank listen shot from the gatehouse. The behemoth dies blocking the gateway. It has destroyed an horrific plug of flesh jammed in a shattered dam. For a moment, a stunned silence broken only by the chitter of smaller tyranids and the crackle of fires. They've breached our outer gate, but the dead carnifex is now wedged in it, effectively a grotesque barrier. However, that also means we can't easily shut the gate. Now there's a gaping hole partly filled by a corpse, and around its edges I already see smaller tyrannid creatures swarming, hacking at the carcass or clambering over it to squeeze through. All units contain that breach. Immediately, reserve squads rush to reinforce the gatehouse interior and murder holes. I'm above and slightly to the side of the gate, looking down into the courtyard beyond. It's chaos. Dozens of hormones slip through gaps around the carnifex corpse and drop into the courtyard where our second-line interior guard troopers and off-duty PDF, who armed themselves when the alarm sounded, engaged them in brutal close combat. Through the swirling dust, I spot a flash of power sword and the bark of a bolt pistol. Our commissar has joined the fray below, personally leading a countercharge to keep the bugs contained at the choke point. From my angle on the wall, I angle my lost gun almost straight down and start picking off tyranids scrambling over the carcass before they can add to the melee inside. Its tricky targets are half obscured by the massive dead carnifex and the flicker of failing gatehouse void shields, but I manage to peg two gaunts in the skull, dropping them as they try to wriggle through a gap. Some defenders are rolling Promethean drums off the wall, creating ad hoc firebombs at the breach. Womp flames gush as a drum explodes, engulfing a knot of bugs in sticky incendiary. Screeches of alien agony emanate from below. For a moment, it looks like we might hold the gate rupture with these desperate measures. Then an ear-splitting hiss like the world's largest snake comes from above us. Before I can react, something long and impossibly fast slithers over the parapet just a few meters to my left. The air shimmers oddly around it. It's as if the creature appeared out of thin air, but I know it must have climbed the wall unseen. Lysa, the lictor, stands tall on our battlements, uncloaking its chitinous body as its camouflage flickers off. It's a nightmare made flesh. 6 limbs, 2 of them massive mantis claws, and a crown of writhing tentacles around a fang-filled maw. In one fluid motion, it impales the nearest guardsman through the chest with a talon. The poor man doesn't even have time to scream. He's lifted off his feet, skewered like meat. Shouts of alarm ring out. Lacquer. Last shots converge, but the creature is devilishly fast. It hurls the corpse off its claw and leaps into a cluster of 3 soldiers sting out left and right. One trooper is decapitated on the spot. Another has his throat ripped open by the lictor's feet tendrils. The third backs away, firing point blank. His shots scorch the lactor.
Carapace, making it shriek. But then the monster backhands him with a spine-bladed limb, sending him crumpling. I'm already turning, bringing my last gun to bear on the thing. Sergeant Kovus is faster, fearless as ever. He charges the Lotor with a roar, power sword crackling to life in his augmented fist. He swings and actually manages to cleave off the tip of one of the Lotor's smaller arms. The creature screeches in fury, lashing out, Covus blocks with his sword, but the force hurls him back, power sword flying from his grasp. The Lotor moves to pounce on him, murder in its many eyes. No time to aim carefully. I drop my last gun, snatch up a fallen shotgun at my feet. Blessed be the armsman who dropped it and rushed toward the melee. The Lotor has cover pressed against a stack of crates, one giant claw raised to eviscerate him. Ugly, I hear myself shout. The Lotor's eyeless head snaps toward me as I level the shotgun at where I hope its center of mass is. Eat this. I snarl and pull the trigger. Bloom. The recoil nearly knocks me over, but the effect is immediate. The shotgun slug shreds into the lictor's midsection, green eye spurting from the massive wound. It staggers with a chittering scream. Before it can recover, Covus, bruised but furious, surges up with his backup sidearm, a bolt pistol the size of a brick, and plants it right under the Lotor's chin. For cardia, Covus roars as he pulls the trigger. Boom! The bolt round detonates the lictor's head in a shower of ichor and bone, cutting its death screech short. The headless corpse flops to the ground at our feet. Covus stands there a second, chest heaving. I realize I'm gaping, adrenaline making my limbs shake again. He gives me the barest nod of thanks about the closest thing to praise one can expect from him, and immediately voxes. Sleeker down on west wall. Check for any others. Emperor knows where there's one Lysa. There could be more, but none immediately materialize. Thank the throne. Down in the courtyard, the gate breach is still a raging battle. However, thanks to the Carnifex corpse plugging most of the gap, our troops have largely contained the incursion. Piles of charred gaunt and a couple of larger warrior forms lie smoking around the ruined gateway. The interior defense lines are holding. I can see Commissar Brandt down there, coat torn and smoking, personally executing a warrior with his power sword as a squad of interior guard. Pour last fire into it. The man's a devil, but in moments like this, inspiring to say the least. Gradually, the relentless waves of Tyranids start to diminish. After maybe 30 more minutes of sustained brutal fighting, their numbers visibly dwindle. Possibly the hive mind expected the orcs to have softened us up more. Instead, the bugs encountered a fiercely intact defense and also engaged pockets of surviving orcs. I later learned that the fleeing orcs, upon encountering the Tyranids, gleefully turned to fight them. Orcs can't resist a brawl, even if it's with another invading xenoforce. Ironically, the Greenkins ended up slowing and distracting parts of the Tyranid swarm, fighting and dying against the new enemy, rather than us. The Emperor truly works in mysterious ways. At some point, a new sound joins the fray, a distant rumble of heavy engines in the sky, our orbital defense platform, and a few Navy escorts, having finished off whatever orc vessels remained, finally turned attention fully to the Tyranid biohips. An incandescent lance of energy spears down from the heavens, slicing through the clouds, a strike from our orbital laser. Moments later, an earth-shaking boom rolls over the battlefield. I didn't witness it directly, but they say one of the Hive Fleet's spore mother ships was obliterated by that shot, halting the rain of reinforcements. Other Tyranid craft bereft of Synanap's control likely went feral or crashed aimlessly without fresh spawn. The Tyranids already planet-side are finite and finite can be killed. By late afternoon, what had been a ferocious assault turns into a series of dying skirmishes.
Scattered gaunt packs leaderless are hunted down by our sortie teams with flamers and shotguns. A few larger beasts attempt last suicide charges, only to be cut down by concentrated tank and gunfire. One particularly stubborn Tyranid warrior managed to hide in a collapsed bunker and ambush a patrol. We lost 2 men taking it out, but such incidents became rarer as our sweeps cleared the land. At long last, as the dust settles and the accurate smoke of battle begins to drift away on the evening breeze, the second all clear is sounded. I find myself slumped behind a parapet, too exhausted to cheer, too grateful to do anything but whisper a hoarse prayer of thanks to the God Emperor. We did it. Emperor's mercy. Somehow we did it. The cost, though, Emperor above. Only when the fighting stops do I fully register the scale of death around me. Our fortification stands, but at great price. Hundreds of our soldiers lie dead or wounded. The courtyard below is littered with the bodies of brave interior guard troopers who held that gate. The ramparts are strewn with blood, much of it Xeno, but plenty human too. Everywhere I look, I see medics working frantically, stretcher bearers hauling casualties, priests moving among the fallen, murmuring the last rites. My own platoon is a shadow of itself. Loran survived thanks to Anelm's care, though she'll carry a scar and a limp from here on. And Selm himself is spattered with more blood than not, having treated dozens of gruesome wounds. He looks dead on his feet, but still goes about his work with steady hands and a distant steely focus. Old Jinin is gone. I helped carry his body myself to the line of covered forms in the courtyard. Many others' friends, comrades are now just names on the casualty list that a mountain clerk will compile by sundown. Yet for all that, the fortress still stands unconquered. As the realization sinks in, a feeling washes over me, pride, sorrow, and sheer relief all tangled together. We faced not one but 2 horrors of the galaxy in quick succession, and we prevailed. It's almost difficult to believe. Night falls, though night is a technical term. The sky above is still aglow with the sickly purple of distant fires and the harsh floodlights we've switched on across the walls. The exterior of Fort Imperator is a scene from hell itself. The ground beyond our walls carpeted in smoldering ash mounds that used to be living creatures. We don't have room to bury or burn them all immediately, but the tech priests and sanitation crews will toil through the dark to at least push the heaps into mass purse. The last thing we need is Tyranid biomass festering or orc spores taking root. We hold a head count, and then a brief somber ceremony for the fallen. Our regimental chaplain, old Father Cole, his white robe stained with soot and blood, leads us in the litany of remembrance. By flickering torchlight, he and ones, though they have died, they are not dead. Through sacrifice they live on in the Emperor's grace. Thousands of us echo the responses, voices cracking. Through sacrifice, we live on. I see hardened veterans with tears in their eyes. My own throat burns as I whisper the names of John and Petrus Sane, and so many others under my breath. When the chaplain concludes with a final prayer to the God Emperor to watch over our departed, we fire a 3-volley last gun salute into the smoky sky. The cracks of our rifles echo across the silent battlefield. I swear the Emperor heard. I'd like to think so. Governor Haas himself steps forward to speak, something he rarely does in person. The normally aloof paper-pushing bureaucrat actually sounds human as he addresses us. Soldiers of Aegis 7, he says, voice amplified over the hushed crowd. Today you have done the Imperium proud. An unprecedented victory. 2 Xenos invasions thwarted in a single day. He pauses, visibly grappling for words. The Emperor's light was with us, and so was your courage. You stood unyielding against horrors that would break lesser men. Because of you, Aegis 7 stands unconquered. A tired cheer rises at that. He's right. We did not break. We stare down at our blood-soaked boots and up at the battered walls and realize we're still here. I find my hands clenching into fists as a wave of emotion wells up. Tears I didn't realize I had free themselves. I wipe them away quickly, before the Camisa can notice. Though truth be told, even Brent looked misty-eyed during the chaplain's rites. For once the stiff governor gives a genuine salute, then adds, "For the Emperor and for the fallen," and steps back. In that moment, I find my throat tight with emotion. The reality of how close we had come to annihilation finally settling in. Yet against all odds, here we stood, alive and victorious. The crowd of survivors around me, all ragged, bandaged, exhausted, lets out a collective shout for the Emperor. It echoes from the scorched plains and rubble. I swallow the lump in my throat and raise my fist along with them. Only now do I dare to retrieve my brother's letter from my jacket, edges damp with sweat and rain, and Emperor knows what else. I promised myself I'd read it after the battle, and Emperor knows I need the uplift. So amid the bustle of medics and repair crews, I find a relatively quiet corner under a spotlight near the rampart stairs, and carefully unfold Torin's letter with trembling fingers. It's written in his messy scroll on a page torn from some field journal. "Dear brother, I hope this letter finds you in good health, or as good as it gets on Aegis 7. We just got back from a month-long campaign in the swamps of Bellatrax. Emperor, what a hellhole. Give me a good, clean fortress wall over slogging in waist-deep mud any day. My unit fought alongside some catacomb jungle fighters. Those folks are crazy, let me tell you. We had a few scraps with Orc scouts out here. Nothing we couldn't handle. The Greenkins seem to be probing all over lately. Camisa says it's a sign something big is coming. Frankly, I'm more worried about the rumors of shadow cults popping up on nearby worlds. One of our psychers had a fit the other day screaming about the hungry stars. Probably nonsense, but it gave us all the creeps. Anyway, enough doom and gloom. I'm okay. A few new scars but still kicking. How are things back home? I bet you're drilling the PDF recruits to pieces like the taskmaster you are. Give Mom a hug for me on Remembrance Day, will you? Emperor willing, this war will quiet down and I'll get a furlough to come visit. I miss the taste of real recaf. The stuff out here tastes like sump water, and I wouldn't mind sleeping under an actual roof for a change. Artillery alarms or not. Keep your head down, little sibling. These are dangerous times. What else is new? But if there's one thing us Vans excel at, it's surviving against the odds. You taught me that. Remember, Torin? I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. A half laugh, half sob escapes me at his mention of Mom and Rissa. He has no idea what we've just been through here. I carefully fold the letter and tuck it back into my jacket close to my heart. He's worried about me. I'm worried about him out there in some Emperor-forsaken swamp facing by the sound of it. The same nightmares we've just survived. Orcs, shadowy cults, talk of hungry stars. The thought that these threats are everywhere in the galaxy is sobering, but also strangely affirming. We're not alone in this.
The living, we carry on. The civilians have emerged from their bunkers, and resumed their labors. If a stranger walked into Fort Imperator today, they might not guess anything happened at all. Aside from some pockmarked walls and a few new statues of heroes that weren't there before, the manufacturers hum with production again. The daily drills never ceased for long, and children laugh and play in the shadow of reinforced bastions. There's a prevailing sense of pride in the populace now. I've heard snatches of conversations in the market, how we showed them an Aegis 7 stands. The morale, once grimly beautiful, as a matter of course, now has a spark of triumph. It's a dangerous thing to feel almost happy in the 41st millennium, but maybe we've earned at least a moment of it. This morning I woke once more to the thunder of our own artillery performing their dawn exercises. Only this time, instead of instinctive dread, I felt almost comforted by it, like an old familiar friend saying hello. After grabbing a steaming cup of recaf, the supply has improved. Trade convoys have resumed now that the warp routes are calmer again. I headed to the same drill yard as always. There I found a new gaggle of white shield cadets standing nervously at attention. Sergeant Covers was tearing into them, of course, bionic eye glinting as he inspected their kit. Among the trainees, I recognized a face. Young Davos, the lad who fainted during our drills the day of the invasion. He survived the battle with only a minor arm wound, and now wears a trooper's chevrons. Today he's helping Covers train the next batch of recruits, barking orders almost as loudly as the old sergeant himself. I couldn't help but smile at that. We put the cadets through a mock assault course this morning. As I ran alongside them, vaulting the same barricades, shouting the same tactical commands, I realized I've become one of the old hands shaping the newbies. Me, who not long ago was the shaking youngster with too big armor, am now the one yelling at a kid to keep his head down and eyes forward. The cycle continues, unbroken. After the exercise, I wandered up to the very same section of rampart where I'd fought and nearly died on that fateful day. The sky was clear blue, for once not clogged with smoke. I could see greenish fields beyond the fortress, where teams have already replanted crops in the revitalized soil. Fortress world or not, people still have to eat. Life goes on. I leaned on the parapet and lit hogue stick, a habit I told myself I'd quit after the battle. But old habits die hard, and well, we all have our coping mechanisms. As I exhaled a plume of smoke toward the horizon, I noticed something. I didn't feel fear, vigilance. Yes, I will never stand on a wall without scanning the distant skies again. But the quivering fear that had haunted me before is tempered now by a hard one. Confidence. We face the worst the galaxy could throw at us, and we're still here. That doesn't mean we'll be careless. No, we remain as watchful as ever, and double so. But there's a steel in our spines that wasn't there before. A certainty that even if hell comes knocking again, we'll meet it with locked shields and loaded guns. A siren blah briefly, just a drill this time, as indicated by the green signal runes. Down below, I see civilians pause, then continue about their day, well practiced at distinguishing false alarm from real. On the walls, troopers dutifully snap to simulated firing positions. I flick away my LA show, put my helmet back on, and join in the brief drill. It's almost comforting, the routine, the normally of a life always preparing for war, but not currently in one. When the drill ends, a young sentry next to me lets out a relieved sigh. "Think we'll ever get a real break, Sarge?" he asks me, half joking. I consider it. A break? I echo, looking out at the horizon.
at the twin suns beginning to set over the reinforced bastions, the same beautiful haunting colors of dusk after a storm. This is our break, I decide with a chuckle. Enjoy it while it lasts. He nods, understanding. On a fortress world, peace is simply the short pause between battles, and that's all right. It's the life we know, and the life we choose. Day after day, soon dusk descends again on Fort Imperator. I finish up my duty shift and prepare for another night cycle of guard rotations and maintenance tasks. Before I head off the wall, I take one last long look over the quiet plains. In the far distance, just at the edge of sight, I think I see a faint green glimmer in the sky. Perhaps the glow of the Great Rift, ever ominous. But it feels a little fainter these days, a little further away. Maybe it's just my imagination, or wishful thinking. Still, I make the sign of the Aquila toward it defiantly. Cadia fell. Yes, I whisper to the wind. But Aegis 7 stands. We stand. Until our last breath. Or until the stars themselves burn cold. Whichever comes first, this world remains the Emperor's bulwark. We'll man these walls, and guard this bastion against whatever nightmares come next. As steadfast tomorrow as we were today. This is my home. This is my life.